Pleasure's all mine,
Greetings
my
from
friend.
Berlin.
How we doing?
We're doing fine. The sun is shining. How are you?
Whereabouts are we today?
In Berlin, Germany.
I love it. It's probably bipolar. I'm in the studio, so like I can't see, but it's probably bipolar weather here. You know what the UK's like. You'll be here in a couple of weeks.
I will be, indeed, next week.
Oh, is it next week already? Brilliant. Benjamin,
Next week.
give us some context on you for the stream, how you became the European defense guy and EDTH.
Well, I guess there are many European defense guys, but we're certainly the ones pushing the frontier of all those hackathons. And yeah, sort of by accident. I mean, I'm a civilian, never done any military service. I'm a physicist. I did my PhD in theoretical physics, doing fundamental research with no practical utility. So all of that has been very much, good and fun, but not defense related at all. And so eventually I wrapped off my PhD in 2021, went through the Entrepreneur for a Startup program, exploring to start a startup of my own. But eventually, I joined to the dark side of things and worked for 2 years in venture capital with Lunar Ventures. Lunar because we were looking for moonshots and early stage, like pre-seed, seed, deep tech startups. And then again, deep tech, of course, it's 2 years. I mean, all of this stuff, lighter materials, computing, all of this is relevant for the military, but that's has never been a focus of ours. So we'd always look at it from a technology and a market and founder point of view, and not really from a military or sovereignty point of view. And for a good 2 years, I had a lot of fun being an associate, doing scouting and technical due diligence and all of the good stuff. So it was the best job in my life. But again, not defense related. And then eventually I quit my job end of 2023 to go for the startup. And that was plan A for 2024. And I had a couple of ideas. I talked to co-founders. And as part of the process, I did the pilgrimage to Silicon Valley. Every founder has to go there eventually just to see what it's like and to network with some folks. And right when I got there in February 2024, there was a major defense tech hackathon in El Segundo, Los Angeles. And I thought that's cool, like young boys watching a sports car thinking, oh yeah, that's cool, right? But there was no, incentive or idea to actually build the sports car or, get into defense myself. It was more like, okay, seeing those guys, the Gunter boys on social media, saving America, saving the world. I thought, yeah, that's cool. Where don't we have defense tech hackathons in Europe? And of course, we have software, AI hackathons. Like, of course, we have lots of hackathons, but not necessarily about defense. And so that's actually a good friend of mine, Jonathan, who's a partner at Inflection, another early stage venture capital fund. And one pushed the other into organizing the first European Defense Tech Hackathon, which ended up happening in June 2024. And we got a lot of partners on board, a bunch of defense tech startups like Helsing, Auterion, Quantum Systems, Ox Robotics, and many others. Also the official side, like the German Bundeswehr Sub Innovation Hub. We got the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, and eventually like 150 people building 34 projects from air defense to demining. And it really flipped the switch also for me personally as a civilian, not having any affiliations with defense to realize, oh, damn, this is really important. You talk to a lot of these Ukrainians and they're like, yeah, drones are actually dangerous and the nature of warfare has changed and we need to do something about it. And that really inspired me to say, okay, most of the other ideas and software pet projects and whatnot, those are actually less relevant compared to we could literally save lives and we could work on defense tech that really protects lives now here and today. And I thought this is just too important. So yeah, gave it a go, jumped in and started the European Defense Tech Hub.
I Benjamin, I think there's probably an OBE or an MBE across the European Union, whatever they have in the union for that in your lifetime, given what the European Defence Tech Hub is trying to do in terms of uniting the bloc and putting a real eye on defence for the European Union. I think it's wonderful in what you're building, and it seems like it's a necessity more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, I think we're doing what sort of no one in the ecosystem is doing, at least not at scale. We're bringing new talent into the defense sector and really getting new folks to work on really important and meaningful problems, like optimizing, ad click rates, not as meaningful. Working on demining or air defense, actually very, very meaningful. And so there are plenty of initiatives out there out of those startup programs, be it Nature Diana, Base, Define, Dockstar, they're all good friends of ours, and we work with all of them. And they really help you if you're in the industry already. If you have a team, if you have a prototype, if you want to go from level 10 to 20, they're great programs to be in. But how do you actually get started? And
Mhm.
that is the problem we're solving for. We're really helping you to go from level -1 to zero, from 0 to 1. And then we're working with a bunch of partners and startup programs and VCs and incubators to help you go from level 1 to 10 and really take it from there. And that's what we're doing and what we've been, doing at scale over the past 12 months.
Ben, can I ask you, why do you think we've lagged behind in Europe when it comes to defense? Is it because we didn't have the talent, or is it because it was just never a focus?
I mean, for sure, it was never a focus, right? I mean, I skipped military service to be totally frank because back then I thought it would be a waste of time. And in that sense, Europe, in a broad geographic sense, has been very much reliant on the US and strong allies. And we've we've been lagging behind because of that. And think we do have the talent, we do have the RP, we do have a lot of stuff going on in academia. But then there needs to be a transition of this into real life and into ventures and products and scale. And that's what has been lagging. And not just in defense tech, also in deep tech or startup land in general. Like there's so much more Europe could be doing. But I think the most important really starts in your mind where you recognize defense is actually important. And it used to be in the same category as porn and gambling and all of those bad things that you don't want to touch. Well, now we're recognizing, oh, damn, this is actually really, really important. And we need this for national security. And it's actually a very good thing to work on defense.
I've got to ask, like, it's completely left of field. Are you a Star Trek fan or a Star Wars fan?
That was for sure.
Star Wars,
Absolutely.
so he loves the reality of what it means for defense and the in space travel and deep tech. I'm a Star Trek fan. Don't hate me for it. I like the Federation. I
It's
like
all right.
I like the idea that we could sort of like live in this world that's sort of given to us, and space is the final frontier, and all we do is push for it. To bring it more back to ground, can we talk a little bit about the history of defense in Europe? I'm not sure how well versed you are. You probably have a lot more knowledge than I do. What I'm trying to get at here is post World War II. Obviously, the world kind of engaged in this Cold War. We had America and Russia in that engagement for a significant period of time. A lot of innovations came out in that period of time. People don't like to say it, but there are some of the innovations that we have today whose roots are built in the Cold War. We don't know who died during that time a lot of the time because it was cold, it wasn't a real war. But in where we are today, do you think we're going to have the energy to put ourselves at the forefront of innovation, or is it going to be a cycle of like 10, 15 years where the innovations made today are going to pay off down the line?
I mean, first off, we have to, quite frankly, and that's one of the key learnings out of Ukraine. Like, you either innovate and you do stuff, or you literally
Die.
actually don't
Yeah.
survive. And this is a very, harsh reality. And I know it's not the reality, thank God, in Berlin or London or most of Europe at the moment. But the
Hey,
closer
it's
you
on the
get to
doorsteps,
sharing,
isn't it?
yeah, I mean, the closer you get to sharing a border with Russia, the more real it becomes, and the more up in arms are people, and the more aware. And so, I'm not a historian, to tell about the developments of the past 50 years. But when you look a lot at the stuff of what is being used today, like electronic warfare to spoof and spam communications on the battlefield. I mean, a lot of these techniques are fairly old, and radar systems, fairly old. And when you think about what is the most, effective method at the moment on the battlefield, it is not fancy nanoparticles or I don't know, what fancy innovation people might be dreaming up. It's not laser guns. It is fiber optic drones. I mean, it's as primitive as that, and people, have been exploring such technologies actually for a long time, and they were disregarded for a long time as being effective. And now, as Ukraine is fighting this horrific war, they need to see what works. And was actually the Ukrainians first who looked into fiber optic drones, and then the Russians, quite sadly, who picked up on it and scaled it. And this is a recurring pattern that we've seen for the entire war. Like Ukraine being very, very innovative, just as a pure necessity to survive. But then on the other hand, Russia just having far greater scale and industrial capacity, and also partners like China to keep pushing to scale, which means in turn Ukraine has to be innovative. Like it's a constant cat and mouse game. Like it's a constant cycle, and so that is going on. It has been going on, and will just continue. And now I guess there are pretty much two timelines to look at. One is, the pace of war, and the pace of war is always yesterday, today, tomorrow. Like you
Mhm.
can't really plan more than two weeks ahead, and you'll be talking a lot about incremental, tactical, but very, very important life-saving improvements. And that's exactly why we're working with a lot of partners in Ukraine, being army corps, being NGOs like Snake Island Institutes, being government like Brave One or the Ministry of Defense, and lots of other good institutions there. But then on the other hand, we also have long-term challenges as Europe, as a continent, for our own security, be it protecting critical infrastructure or developing actual asymmetric capabilities. Like, actually, let's make the nanoparticles work, to develop an asymmetric capability. And I'm mentioning that because at our very first European Defense Tech Hackathon in June 2024 in Munich, we had one of the projects looking into how to use nanoparticles to track troop movements in a way that is concealed to the enemy. So you
Wow.
know where the enemy is going. You have another channel for reconnaissance, but the enemy doesn't. And now, of course, all of this is very early and very nascent and has no immediate impact on the battlefield. But developing this further in 2 to 3, maybe 5 years could lead to a genuine unfair advantage. And that is also what we need to keep in mind and what we need to balance those tactical incremental improvements, which are very, very important, while on the other hand, also long-term goal strategic initiatives to develop more means. When you think about what is the most useful tech, besides lots of ammunition and patriots that the West has delivered, it is starting. I mean, that's a genuine unfair advantage for Ukraine to have starting, and yeah, somewhat more means for communications on the battlefield. And so the question is like how to come up with a new starting, how to come up, with the starting for nanoparticles or for some other domain to have a genuine unfair advantage in a couple of years. And, ideally use that to create deterrence and to never actually have to use it.
What is the bottleneck right now for Europe? Is it talent? Is it legacy companies not innovating enough, and hence why the hackathons are important? Or is it something else? Is it capital?
I mean, of course, it's all of the above. There's not a single bottleneck. I mean, there's so many bottlenecks, and we're working on the talent problem. Give us some more time, but we're bringing hundreds and thousands of people into
You're trying to
defense.
make
And
something unsexy sexy to work on, right? Make it fun to build, even though it's got implications on real human life. But it's
yeah,
equally as
I mean,
important.
make the good guys look like the good guys. That's, and so we're working on the talent problem. The talent problem, it's severe. I mean, we're seeing a lot of M&A lately in the defense industry, which is not just due to, technological necessity, but it's also just to talent scarcity. And for large players
So
picking up smaller teams.
these are acqui-hires, and then them owning the IP, but then also bringing on those teams.
Yeah, to give you one example, we had a startup called Plano. They came to our very first hackathon last year in June, and they pivoted from climate tech into defense. They were working on drone autonomy and navigation, and they were just a couple of months ago acquired by Starhawk, one of the major up-and-coming defense startups. And why? Well, because they have great technology, but also great talent. And now one of the co-founders is director at Stark. And so on the one hand, great success story coming out of our hackathons, and on the other hand, this is to the fact that yes, there's a lot of talent scarcity. Now, I guess this is one part of the problem. The other part is, of course, around financing, around funding that is available. At the moment, it feels like every man and their dog are starting a new early stage defense tech VC, or all of those deep tech VCs are looking into defense. So actually, early stage funding, is comparatively fine compared to late stage funding. Like, who's putting the 20 mil into your Series B? Like, unless you know a billionaire co-founder, you're not going to start Enroll or Helsing or any of these companies, at least not that easily. So we're lacking a lot of late stage financing, but then also probably most importantly, we're lacking contracts. So a lot of talk is going on about financing. And what you see is that if you're a true breakout company, if you're building the next Helsing, one way or another, you find the right kind of billionaire, friend, and you find international investors. So in that sense, I'm less concerned about that versus we have partners like defense startups in our network. They've been around for a couple of years and they've two free contracts in the US. They have exactly zero contracts in Germany. I don't know how many contracts they might have in the UK, but this is an actual problem. Like, if we want to keep those companies in Europe and building for Europe, they they need
The
revenue.
ecosystem have to pick
they
up. The ecosystem has to pick up the slack. The governments have to
exactly
pick up the slack. The union has to
they
pick up the slack. NATO has to pick up the slack.
they don't need just investment, which is fine to get started, but eventually they need revenue, and they need revenue now, not like in 10 years. And we've been talking to a lot of ministries of defense, and their thinking still seems around, oh yeah, the startups just have to get large enough to deal with all of our bureaucracy, and let's explore different ways for them to get large enough to cope with us. Well, on the other hand, it would be so super important actually to get rid of bureaucracy and make tenders, leaner and easier, and also more adapted to just current circumstances. Like, drone technology is changing so rapidly, so all of those considerations around, oh, do we have spare parts for the next 10 years? Well, might apply for tanks, does not apply necessarily to drones.
It makes a lot of sense. What I want to ask is there a dialogue that's happening within the hackathon, within the European Defence Tech Hub ecosystem, that you're building out the hacks, the right partners, and a dialogue with the ministries of defense and the government so that they understand the rate of change or the rate of innovation that's happening in Europe?
Yeah, absolutely. So to
And
every hackathon, we're inviting officials, both from those procurement agencies, like we were just in Denmark running our latest hackathon there
how
in
was that?
Copenhagen. That was amazing. We had like 130 plus hackers and mentors. Last weekend, we had folks and mentors from the Danish Defense Command, so military experts. We had also folks from DALO, the Danish Acquisition and Logistics Organization. So we had actual procurement people and officials, like the National Armaments Director, looking at those hackathon projects, and then also networking with all of the partners that we're having. And that is hugely valuable, both for them to see what kind of innovations might be coming up, but then also for startup folks to, talk to them and explain, oh, I get a chance to talk to the person who's going to process my form and my application. Well, that's usually beneficial. And for a lot of, mainly historic reasons, we didn't want that, especially in Germany. We, wanted to very much prevent the buy side to talk to the sell side, and the other way around. And we need to get around that because it's not useful anymore. To a certain degree, both sides need to understand that something has changed, and we don't necessarily just need more tanks, but we also need more drones, and we need more flying drones, but also more naval drones and more underwater drones, and we need ground vehicles, and we just need more unmanned systems because we don't want to send soldiers and risk their life. We want to send robots, and that's what people need to fundamentally understand. It is shifting from large monolithic systems costing millions and billions, like tanks, warships, fighter jets. They're shifting to small, inexpensive systems. Could be a small FPV quadcopter drone, really, really cheap, $1,000 can take out a large tank costing millions. And that kind of asymmetry, people really need to understand, and on both sides.
When both sides have equal amounts of technology, how does one side end up winning? Because if it's innovation that's the alpha in defense, and like constantly being on that bleeding edge of technology, of drones, of warfare, both ballistic missile type, as well as the computational side, how does one side win? Or
Well,
is
you
it that
win
you end up in
by
a stalemate?
Well, on the one hand, that's exactly what's happening at the moment. Like when you're looking at the situation in Ukraine, it's dire, but Russia is very far from winning. Like they keep pushing every day a couple meters, but taking a couple percentage points of land every year. Compared to the total size, they're very, very far from actually succeeding to conquer Ukraine. So you could put it's not quite a stalemate, but yeah, the front line is pretty much frozen. And that is a terrible situation, as both sides are expending a lot of resources and a lot of people are dying every day. And what you would actually want is to have credible deterrence, where the enemy knows that if he attacks, then you can fight back and it will be just too costly. Like you want to be in a position where you can make the enemy understand that this will be too costly. And well, what do? You try to establish this deterrence. And on the one hand, this needs mass production. But yeah, to be totally frank, we will not outproduce China plus Russia. Effectively, that's what we're up against. So in terms of just pure manufacturing capacity, in terms of amount of drones, amount of ships, we're nowhere near the capacity that they have in the foreseeable future, which brings us back to the earlier point. We need defense innovation. We need to be smarter. We not just need the fiber optic drones, but we also need the next kind of starting. We need the nanoparticles. We need all of those innovations, because you need not just mass, you need precise mass. And as a general trend, when you look, from World War II to today, what has constantly increased is precision. And why is computing so tremendously important? Well, because if you have a chip on board, you can calculate and correct your trajectory,
In real
which
time.
means you can actually hit the bridge if you have to. And that is a constant trend that we've seen, and why computing is so damn important. Um, if if you're curious about that, read Chip War. It's a great book. And it really explains why chips and computing is so important for national security.
I was itching to ask you this when I knew that we were coming on the show this week. America, the U.S. government has just bought 10% of Intel. They sort of like started that national. It feels like a start of that nationalization process, that AI sovereignty that has been in the news for a long period of time over the last few years, as people have begun to understand the implications of having sovereignty over AI systems. What's your take on Europe needing that?
I mean, first we would need something like Intel or NVIDIA. We would need chip giants first, and before we could privatize or yeah, commercialize anything. I think there is actually a very decent opportunity to build up something new, because a lot of the world is at the moment focused on electronics, on GPUs and CPUs,
Hmm.
and on traditional chips. And a lot of infrastructure is built out in both Taiwan and the US, and a lot of energy is going in there. And of course, we will not, compete and succeed in producing more and better GPUs. But while they're putting a lot of energy and focus into producing more and better GPUs, we do have an actual opportunity to look into what is next. What kind of photonic, neuromorphic, exotic compute chips are out there, which again lead to a genuine asymmetric step size advantage. And there are a lot of promising startups. Like when you look, for example, into hackathonics out of Germany, they're building like the NVIDIA for photonic compute. They're looking into actual ways how to build digital photonic computers, like how to represent zeros and ones in a photonic way, which is tricky. Light never stops. And, if you absorb the photon, it's gone. So how do you do zero and one? Not as straightforward, right? And they're looking into this, and this is really exciting. Like we could see Moore's law start again for photonic transistors, and we could see it improve all the way. And of course, today the systems might not be competitive, but then give it a couple of years and exponential improvement, and eventually we'll get there, especially for use cases that are very energy or latency sensitive. Like nothing is faster than light, so you will get unparalleled latency, and you will get to a point where you will just outperform electronic systems. And there's a very good chance there's so many other players in Europe working on photonic computing, working on quantum technologies, not just quantum computing, also end-to-end quantum communications, working on neuromorphic technology. There's like Samron and Spinklaus in Dresden working on what does the new generation of chips for AI really look like? Do we need vector matrix multiplication? Like, do I need these mathematical abstractions? Like, that's not how our brain works. Our brain has neurons, and neurons are firing spike trains one to the other. Maybe it should work more like that, right? And so I think there are a lot of promising startups looking into this, and then you could have a genuine unfair advantage also in the battlefield, because at the moment the situation is sort of either you go with NVIDIA Jetsons, which is kind of like picking DJI Mavic for the drones, it's off the shelf, it works, people know what to do. But it's also rather expensive. It's not super efficient. And on the other hand, people build their own solutions. They use Raspberry Pis or MediaTek or Qualcomm or whatever. And so it's a lot more energy efficient. And on the other hand, not quite as capable as NVIDIA Jetsons. And you would probably want to get the best of both worlds, where you still have your, RISC-V CPU combined with an AI core, which might be provided by a company like Samron or some other neuromorphic computing company. And that gives you performance, like AI performance for AI navigation, target recognition, and tracking, as if you had a Jetson, but at a price point of a Raspberry Pi. And that's what you'd be looking for.
Benjamin, before we let you go, I've got to ask, how important are rockets to national security today?
Well, it's like asking how important are bananas to your nutrition, right? I mean, it's part of it, right? Like you need rockets, and in that sense, it is important. It has a certain role to play, right? And of course, we also need rockets, right? But then in the end, I think the most important thing we learned also over the past few years is that things really need to act in concert. And no individual point solution can really make a genuine difference. Like in the end, you need to integrate into the kill chain, and you need to know where to fire the rocket, right? So you need intelligence. Where's the intelligence coming from? Well, on a more strategic level, it's coming from satellite data. Now, on a more tactical level, it's coming from reconnaissance drones. So how does the guy operating the rocket know where to shoot? Well, they need to communicate with the guy operating the reconnaissance drone, and they need to talk to each other. And in that sense, you actually need a lot of systems working in concert to achieve an effect on the battlefield. And that combined effect, and actually thinking, how do I integrate with others? That is way more important than thinking about individual point solutions.
Benjamin, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for the masterclass on defense. I am thoroughly looking forward to actually meeting you in person and having a longer conversation and getting you on the show. Before we let you go, where can people find you? When's the next hack?
Absolutely. Well, just find me online by my name everywhere you might be hanging out. I'm super active on LinkedIn, but also other platforms. You'll find me next week. We're in DSEI in the UK, so it'd be cool to meet you in person. And yeah, on the other hand, our next hack will be the London Defense Tech Hackathon, Defense with us, because we're an international event. So we're rebellious in that we're coming to the UK, we're spelling defense with us. That's not just what the Americans do, that's also what the French do. So yeah, it's truly international, and it is meant that way. So we'll be coming to London September 25th to 28th. The whole thing is part of London Defense Tech Week. Together, our hackathon, resilience conference, and Future Forces Demo Day are forming an entire week of defense events, plus a lot of side events. And yeah, if you're real about defense and building for defense, please come to our London hackathon. You'll very easily find it online if you Google for it.
Benjamin, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the time. I'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks.